Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Allison Carvalho. I'm an events coordinator here at ASEC, and I will be your moderator. Welcome to today's webcast, How to Determine the Right Time to Make the Move to SAP S/4HANA, the Alkermes Success Story. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs running in the background. All registrants will receive an email with a link to review this recording, should you wish to do so in the future. If you have any questions about any of the content being presented during the webcast, please feel free to type in those questions using the Q&A box on your screen. As time permits, we will get to as many of those questions as possible at the end of the presentation. As an encouragement to our ASEG members to share your feedback and suggestions with us, we've also included a survey that we'd like you to take at the end of the presentation. If you're unable to remain on the line, the survey will be included in our post-event email. I'd like to pass this webcast on to our speakers. Shoshana, take it away.
Thanks, Allison. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. As Allison said, my name is Shoshana Jamieson. I'm the Senior Director of Illumiti's Continuous Improvement Program. The goal of the program is to help clients maximize the return on their SAP investment. And we do that through a few different offerings. We have health checks, value assessments, and what we call the Power of Next, which is our methodology for helping clients plan for their S4 move and build a business case. And that's what we'll be focusing on today. In terms of my background, I have over 25 years of SAP experience. I started my career at a company called OmniLogic, where I was a sales and distribution consultant. OmniLogic was acquired by PricewaterhouseCoopers Consulting, where I expanded my focus to the entire supply chain and became the national APO leader. PwC Consulting was acquired by IBM, where I moved into project management, program management, and delivery executive roles. And I joined Illumiti about 9 years ago, and I work out of the Toronto office. And I have with me today Graham Marwick, who is my client and friend. Graham, can you please introduce yourself and give some background on Alkermes, please?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Shosh. So hi, everybody. My name is Graham Marwick. I have been in or around the SAP world for pretty much my entire career, going on 20 years now. I started on the consulting side. I worked for companies like IBM and also HCL. And about 6 or 7 years ago, jumped over onto the customer side. I ran the SAP community at a large life sciences contract research organization based out of Boston, Massachusetts. And then about 2 years ago, jumped over to Alkermes, which is a pharmaceutical company also based in Massachusetts. My role here at Alkermes is I essentially run our enterprise application technology group. So I'm going to start the presentation today by talking a little bit about Alkermes and the triggers for this project that we did with Illumiti, before I hand it back to Shoshana, who will take us through the whole process that we went through on this effort. So first off, some background on Alkermes. So Alkermes is a pharmaceutical organization, global pharmaceutical company. We're focused on disorders of the central nervous system. And we've also expanded in recent years into oncology and tumor treatment. We're headquartered out of Ireland. Our major sites are, we have most research and development in Waltham, Massachusetts, and then we have 2 major manufacturing locations, one in Athlone, Ireland, the other in Wilmington, Ohio. As an organization, we've grown primarily through acquisition over the years. So as a result of that, we do have a number of localized processes. And that has led us to have a desire for one global source of the truth. Just to touch a little bit about our current ERP environment. Right now, we run SAP ECC. It runs globally across our 2 manufacturing sites, that one in Ireland and the one in Ohio. It is one instance of SAP. However, it is somewhat localized. We have a significant amount of localized customizations in the system, which has resulted in further advancing of localized processes in those 2 locations. Our R&D and a lot of our G&A activities out of Waltham, Massachusetts, run on Oracle EBS, Oracle E-Business Suite. That's a somewhat archaic system, and we're looking to move away from that in the future and move towards one standard SAP system across the entire company. So that just gives a little bit of the background of the current environment that we're in right now, our localized processes, our multiple ERP systems, and why we really wanted to engage with someone to understand the journey and the value of moving forward to S/4HANA. I'll pass it back to you now, Shoshana.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to cover our S4 migration planning methodology called the Power of Next, which helps clients plan for their move to S4, as well as build their business case. Our methodology differs depending on which path the client chooses to move to S4, but we're going to focus on the steps that we took for Alkermes. When clients start thinking about moving from ECC to transitioning to an intelligent enterprise leveraging S/4HANA, they have many questions, and Alkermes was no different. They had questions about what S/4HANA functionality would benefit them specifically, what would the costs be, do they need to do a data cleanup prior to the migration, and what's the right path forward. Our methodology seeks to answer all of these questions and comes up with the right path for each client's unique requirements. When clients are looking to do any significant project, we always start by asking three fundamental questions. Why is the client looking to make a change? What should the change be? And how should the change be executed? Beginning with the why, we know that S/4HANA has functionality that benefits all clients. There's improved process innovation with enhanced and redesigned end-to-end processes built on best practices. There's real-time KPIs and embedded analytics that allows insight to action. There's increased process automation that allows greater automation of tasks, and especially leveraging machine learning and AI. And of course, the user experience has been greatly enhanced via Fiori that makes transacting in SAP a lot more intuitive and a lot more like transacting in an app. SAP has also enhanced the functionality available in each module. For example, in finance, there's Universal Journal, group reporting, MRP Live in manufacturing. SAP has also brought some functionality into the core now, such as advanced ATP, PPDS, and the extended warehouse management. And SAP keeps enhancing the functionality with each release as well, within each module. But at Illumiti, we seek to go deeper. We want to understand why the specific client we're talking to, in this case Alkermes, is looking to move to S/4HANA. And we use a tool called the Change Matrix to get them to articulate exactly that. We start by asking clients what they want or need but don't have today. And typically what we hear is the desire for improved reporting and analytics, greater visibility, better data integrity. Then we get clients to explain the current pain or imminent risk. So what is the trigger for this project? We know that SAP is strongly enforcing that all clients move to S/4HANA by 2027, but we want to know if there's any reason beyond that for the project. And some examples here can be a new legal requirement, or potentially a competitor has taken an action that the client needs to respond to. Both of these form the case for change. But we also want to understand what are some of the negative aspects of making the move to S/4HANA. So we ask clients to articulate what are the implementation obstacles or negative ramifications of doing the project. And what we often hear here as number one is cost. Number two is resource availability. We also hear sometimes fear that there's not a sufficient ROI for going ahead with the project. And lastly, we have clients articulate what they love about what they have today that they don't want to give up. And by doing so, we're hearing what are the change management issues that we need to address as part of the project. And here, some examples that come up include a special report, a special interface, or a slick customization that they don't want to give up. And again, by having clients talk about it up front, we're able to make sure that what they have today exists in the future. Both of those form the headwinds for making the change. In most cases, the positive outweigh the negative and clients choose to go ahead with the change, but that's not always the case. If the negatives outweigh the positives, the client doesn't have to make a change. And in some cases, clients will choose to wait a bit and to address some of the things that come up in the change matrix exercise before going ahead with the change. Now, pre-COVID, we did these exercises in person with Post-it notes and Sharpies, but with COVID, we've had to transition to a virtual whiteboarding tool. And I'll show you what a completed change matrix looks like. I know this slide is very busy, but it gives you a sense. So the way we run it now is, and this I should explain, is Alkermes output. And it's one quadrant. It's the quadrant of what they want or need, but don't have today. As you can see, we ran the exercise twice, once for the executive team, once for the management team. We did this because of the sheer number of participants. We wanted to make sure everybody had a voice. We also thought by running the management team separately, they would speak more openly. So each individual was given a different colored Post-it note, and they put down their thoughts. And as they were putting down their thoughts, the Illumiti team looked for commonalities and grouped them into themes. And as you can see, the reasons for Alkermes wanting to move ahead with a S4HANA project is to address some of the things that Graham had talked about. So the desire to go to global processes. They do have a lot of systems today, which leads to duplicate tasks and a lot of interfaces that they would like to streamline. There was also the desire to improve data integrity as well as the user experience. So that helped define the why. Next, we were able to focus on the what. And the what we're talking about here is what S4HANA scope specifically would benefit Alkermes. Prior to starting the engagement, we ran discovery calls with the Alkermes team to understand at a high level what the issues and opportunities are. And based on that information, we were able to come up with workshop schedules by module. And the workshops lasted about a week, and they were in parallel. And what we did during the workshops is we had focus sessions to understand the issues that Alkermes is facing, to be able to determine if any S4HANA functionality could help alleviate those issues. We had focus sessions to understand the requirements for the opportunities or wish list items, again, to see whether any S4HANA functionality could help Alkermes capitalize on those opportunities. We also ran job shadowing sessions of key roles in each business area to see where S4HANA can help eliminate tedious tasks or to bring functionality or tasks into SAP that are currently being done manually. Next, we leveraged SAP's Process Discovery Report. For those of you who aren't familiar with the report, it's an SAP report. It's run by basis on a client's environment to see how the client's using SAP today and looks at their industry as well. And it generates a report that explains what S4HANA functionality SAP believes the client could benefit from, which Fiori apps, as well as any SAP cloud solutions, again, that SAP believes the client can benefit from. The report tends to be hundreds of pages long. And so at Illumiti, what we do is we take the information that we gather from the change matrix as well as the value assessment workshops, and we vet it and get it down to a manageable list of what we believe will actually benefit our clients. And we produced a deliverable based on our findings and recommendations. And I've included a slide here of what the deliverable looks like. So for each thing, we specify the finding, the S4HANA functionality, the benefit, and then later after we present it to the client, in this case Alkermes, we capture the decision made. And so in this case, the issue that was raised is that Alkermes felt that they aren't able to have sufficient visibility to supply. They identified the Fiori apps that would help with this, explain the benefit, and as I mentioned, we captured the decision later on after we presented our findings and recommendations to Alkermes. Next, we leveraged SAP's Transformation Navigator. And what the tool does is it allows you to create a SAP product roadmap for the client. The way the tool works is you log in using a client's SID, and the tool automatically maps what the client has today in their SAP environment to the S/4HANA equivalent. And I know on my screen it's not that clear. I hope you can see on your screens. But if you look at the top right screenshot, what the tool allows you to do beyond the mapping is it allows you to also identify additional desired capabilities, and it will do mapping for those as well. So in this example, we've included finance and specifically accounting and financial close. Alkermes wanted all of that functionality, and you'll see the tool did the mapping, and it showed that S/4HANA has most of the functionality that will handle these capabilities. But for the financial closing, it was suggesting that the SAP Financial Closing Cockpit could help even more. And in the middle, where you see the green little house, the tool also allows you to specify whether you want an on-prem solution or a cloud solution, and it does the mapping as well there. The last step is clients prioritize their capabilities, and the tool generates a Word document, Excel, or PowerPoint version of the SAP product roadmap. And the reason we do this as part of our methodology is it helps to identify any additional licenses or products that the client will want in order to get all the capabilities they desire. And we take that information and we provide it to our sales team within Illumiti so that they're able to cost out the additional price for the licenses. And we need that to include into the business case, as you'll see a little bit later. Next, we take our deliverable with the findings and recommendations. And again, all of that information is based on the change matrix, workshops, job shadowing, as well as the process discovery report analysis. And we determine of our recommendations what we should demo, configure, and demo to Alkermes to evaluate. I've included a few different examples on the bottom of some of the functionality we showed, including integrated business planning, advanced material planning, and GL flexible workflow. That's just a subset of the many things that we showed Alkermes. And the way we did our presentation is we walked through the deliverable, explained each finding, our recommendation, and where appropriate, showed the S/4HANA functionality so that Alkermes knew why we were showing what we were showing. And then at the end of our presentation, we provided Alkermes with the deliverable. They met internally to decide what of our recommendations they wanted to move ahead with. And then that allowed us to define the scope for the project and build an implementation plan. And that allowed us to determine the implementation costs, which were another input into the business case. Moving on to the how. Clients can choose to move to S4 in various ways. The fastest way is to do a technical conversion. And for clients who are looking to go that way, our guidance there is to at least turn on Fiori apps so that the users see some benefit. Upgrading to S4 is costly. Asking the users to do a lot of testing and then see no benefit is a hard pill to swallow. So at least by showing them Fiori, we believe that helps with user adoption. The second way that clients can move to S/4HANA is a Brownfield migration, where they upgrade their existing SAP environment. In that case, we change our methodology a little bit in that we rely on a tool called the SAP Readiness Check, which shows what breaks or what's not compatible with S4. The other thing that we have clients do is we have them set up a sandbox environment, because that allows them to see what breaks when moving to S4 and what could be remediated and what needs to be remediated. It allows them to play. But the other benefit of doing a sandbox is, for our art of the possible, we're able to do the demo in the sandbox environment and allow clients to see what the functionality would look like with their data, so it's a little bit more meaningful to them. The next way that clients can move to S4 is to do a Greenfield implementation, which is essentially standing up a new box. And in the case of Alkermes, they felt that because they were moving from local processes to global processes, their desire to move back to best practices and get away from customizations and remove interfaces, they felt a Greenfield migration would be the best fit for them, and we agreed. I should mention there's one more type of migration option, which is called a select data transition, which is not on this slide. And that's a bit of a hybrid between Brownfield and Greenfield, in that you're setting up a new S4 environment, but you're bringing over some of your existing landscapes. So it could be a company code and all the customizations and code and data that comes with the company code. So with the other piece done, we had all the information available to us to build the business case. And for that, we leveraged SAP's Value Lifecycle Manager tool. The first thing we entered was the benefits, and the way that's determined is based on the SAP product selected. So in the case of Alkermes, we knew, of course, they were considering S/4HANA. We also specified IBP, as well as SAP Analytics Cloud, or SAC. Next, we went business area by business area and selected the processes and scope, as well as the KPIs. And by doing all of that, it determined the benefits of the business case. Then we focused on the costs. As I mentioned, the SAP Readiness Check report identifies things that aren't compatible or need to be addressed as part of Brownfield Migration. But another piece of the report is it provides sizing guidance. So we took that information and provided it to Alkermes. Alkermes provided it to their hosting provider, and they in turn provided us with the Delta infrastructure costs for Alkermes to move to S4, and we input that number into the tool. As I mentioned earlier, we leveraged the SAP Transformation Navigator to determine additional SAP products that Alkermes would need and that potentially needed new licenses, and we input those license costs into the tool. Based on the S/4HANA scope that was agreed upon, we built an implementation plan, and that included various phases, and we entered the implementation cost into the business case as well. And Alkermes wanted us to also include the cost for their people for the duration of the project, so we added that cost in too. Next, we entered into the tool 7 financial data points, being Alkermes revenue, number of employees, operating income, cost of goods sold, average annual inventory, as well as days payable and day sales outstanding. And that allowed the tool to then generate the business case and calculate the one-time and recurring benefits. The tool also it calculates the project economics. And 2 key data figures that, of course, Alkermes looked at was the ROI and the payback period. Now, I should mention that our experience, not only with Alkermes, but with all clients in using the Value Lifecycle Manager, is it's felt that the benefits are somewhat overly optimistic. But what's great about the tool is in the report it generates, it gives the actual calculations. So you can see in this example, for reduced inventory carrying costs, it provided the formulas and the figures that were used to come up with the calculation. So that allowed us to work with Alkermes to vet the numbers and get it to a place where they felt comfortable sharing it with the stakeholders. So at the end of our project, we provided Alkermes with the deliverable, with the business case, with the implementation, and the proposal. And I'll hand it back to Graham to explain Alkermes' experience going through the project, as well as Alkermes' decision.
So then it was back to us, and we had to make the decision and understand the best route forward for Alkermes. So obviously we've now got a full value case, we've got a full roadmap, and we've got full costs associated with moving forward. So internally we met and we sat down and we went through all of that. We could see that there were significant benefits in moving to S/4HANA. Those benefits included, moving to one ERP platform globally, which is a big strategic enabler for us. Moving to S/4HANA Cloud fully SaaS, we do not want to be in the business of having internal data centers. It helped us advance both our cloud strategy as well as our standardization strategy across the company. There was significant support for the re-architecture of global finance processes across all accounting, as well as things like global procurement and FP&A. We recently went on a journey of globalizing procurement processes through a tool called Jagger. And by moving to global ERP through S/4HANA, that further enhanced that strategy. We could also see the benefits of the Sales Analytics Cloud coming through from an FP&A perspective. Global supply chain and manufacturing processes being re-architected to standard. So the implementation of master data governance of MDG plus workflow, things like PPDS, production planning detailed scheduling, enabled advancement of our global supply chain strategies. global processes within the system, we feel would enable simpler acquisition scenarios. So Alkermes continues to be an acquisitive organization. And our strategy is to continue down that road. So technology enabling smoother integration of acquisition targets is a good thing for us. And of course, we touched on this a little bit through the presentation, a lot throughout the presentation, the data availability and insights offered through things like SAC, plus the integration options open here for our global data lake, which is another thing we've been strategically investing in a lot recently, we saw would bring significant value to the overall organization. So we could see that we had all these benefits. We could see that there was a business case that was taking shape here for Alkermes to move to S4HANA. From there, we moved on and we started talking about, well, what are those hindrances? What are the things that we need to overcome in order to realize that value? And we very quickly got into a big conversation about the significant organizational change that will come with this effort. Not only that, but the effort required across the entire organization to support such an implementation was a big topic of discussion for us as we went through that value case. So that led us to the point where we needed to make a decision. Based on all these steps that we took, we came to the decision that Alkermes as an organization should remain focused on the globalization and the standardization of our processes. And we should drive that change in culture and drive that activity across the business prior to kicking off a major technology implementation. Associated with those process and culture changes, we decided that we could continue to focus moving the organization to global ECC, so essentially retiring our Oracle EBS platform, and that we should make that as the first step towards a global S4HANA implementation. If we do that, it could enable a brownfield move to S4HANA in the future, rather than a full greenfield project that we would require at this point in time. Frankly, there are other business priorities in our organization, things like commercialization of new products, things like focus on our R&D pipeline, and other things that put the global implementation of S4HANA down the prioritization list. And a number of those benefits that we saw prior can be realized through global ECC in the short term. The full move to S4HANA was seen as too impactful and too costly to the overall business at this point in time. And so that's why we decided with a strategy of continuing to invest in ECC for the coming years, granted we will move to S4HANA in the future. So all that being said, you'll probably ask, well, why are we calling this a success story if we've made the decision to not move to S4HANA now, and we'll move to S4HANA in the future? And the reality is what this effort gave us was a full value case. For a number of years, we'd been debating internally whether we should or should not move to S4HANA. So this piece of work gave us the full value case, the full roadmap, and the full cost to do that. And it enabled us to all come to the table with data, without emotion, to have the conversation about when is the right time to move to S4HANA. And that's really why we call this whole piece a success story. Shoshana, I'll pass it back to you to wrap us up.
So I believe most of you who decided to join us today are probably somewhere in your S4HANA journey, similar to Alkermes. And if you have any questions on S4HANA or our methodology, I've included my contact information below, or of course you can always find me on LinkedIn. And with that, Alison, we'd like to open it up to questions, please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful presentation. So we're going to go ahead and take some questions. Please feel free to type in those questions using the Q&A box on your screen. Let's see right here. All right. First question we have here. How mature is S4HANA for IS utility companies based out of the USA? We generate power, gas, and transmit distribute to our 8 million customers. How many utility companies using SAP ECC 6.0 IS-U have migrated to S4HANA successfully?
I honestly don't have the answer for that. I think we'll have to take that one away.
No problem at all. All right, next question we have here. Do most of the clients you work with move to S4 with Fiori or simply do a technical upgrade, keep old GUI screens?
Yeah, so in the past, some did migrate without Fiori. As I mentioned earlier, those who did it without Fiori then later contacted us or involved us to see, once they were live on S4, how they could benefit from S4 and wanted to turn on Fiori then. It's easier to turn on Fiori when you're doing the migration than to go back and do it afterwards. That's been our experience. And again, Fiori gives a lot of, we know people are used to their T codes, but it's a very quick transition to Fiori, and there's a lot of benefit that comes with the Fiori apps as well in terms of KPIs and stuff like that. So again, our position is that we believe clients should turn on Fiori at least when doing a technical upgrade.
Perfect. All right, next question we have here. Is there a high-level criteria for moving to S4HANA? I mean, is the revenue, global pressure, industry, etc.?
So I'm trying to understand. I mean, in revenue, global presence, industry. No, I mean, so assuming you're on SAP today, by going through this methodology, it helps you determine if there's a case to move to S4HANA. Oftentimes, the benefits that come with S4HANA do merit making the move to S4HANA. But as you saw, sometimes it also uncovers going through this process that maybe you're not ready quite yet. But in general, S4HANA is a good choice. And again, SAP is pushing clients that way to stay compliant.
Great. All righty. I have two questions here that seem like they may be related. Hold on. Typically, how long did it take for Alkermes to implement the S4HANA? Did they go for Greenfield or Brownfield?
Yeah, so I can see that question was asked before we got to the end of the presentation. Yeah, we made the decision to not move forward with S4HANA now. We will move forward with S4HANA in the future. And our hope, our plan is that will be a Brownfield implementation to S4HANA in the future.
Awesome. All right, got a few more here. Hang on. Does Illumiti perform the technical upgrade by itself, or does it give the technical part to a third party?
Sorry, can you repeat that one again?
No problem. Does Illumiti perform the technical upgrade by itself, or does it give the technical part to a third party?
No, we do the migration. We can do any of those flavors, from technical upgrade to Brownfield, Greenfield, the whole gamut.
Awesome.
We don't use a third party. We do it ourselves.
Perfect. We got another one here. How can we sell an S4 project to our stakeholders who do not understand the value?
Right.
I can try and take this one.
Okay.
So I can try and jump in here, Shoshana, if you want. I mean, I think that is the exact problem that we were having as an organization within Alkermes, making sure that everybody understood the value and the roadmap and the cost and the implications of moving forward with an effort like this. So if you have stakeholders that don't understand the value of moving to S4HANA, really you need to find a way to get it in black and white by going through an exercise such as this, using things like the value lifecycle tool doing those post-it note style exercises to really understand from all the stakeholders what they want to achieve, and then finding a way to broadcast that back to them in clear English in a way that they can understand, mapping the value to the cost, and then making a decision from there. And that's what this process was essentially for, making people understand the value of doing something like this.
Awesome. Hang on one second. We have quite a few questions. I'm just kind of trying to go through them, make sure I don't miss anybody. Let's see. What could integration specialists with iDocs, BAPIs, et cetera, do to prepare for S4HANA better?
I need to see the question. I know you say it, and then I feel like I need to see it myself. Or can you repeat it again?
No problem at all. What could integration specialists with iDocs, BAPIs, et cetera, do to prepare for S4HANA better?
I'm not sure where to go with this question. I'm not sure I understand what they're asking specifically. So the only thing I could say to that, or if you want to go ahead, Graham, go ahead.
I think it sounds like that's a technical person asking a question, someone who's someone who's a technical person who focuses on integration and BAPIs and iDocs and things like that, and how to prepare for a move to S4HANA. I mean, the short answer is work with your partner, work with SAP, do the work that you need to do to educate yourself on what a move to S4HANA entails and how your skills need to change when you go from ECC to S4HANA. And there's a ton of stuff out there on SAP Help and various other places that you can utilize to do that.
Great. How do you think of a single versus multiple instances of S4HANA? What would be your criteria for choosing one way or another?
I mean, we would need to understand the environment better. Some clients would choose to do one site as a pilot and see how that goes and then roll everybody else in. Others will choose to do a big bang approach. I don't know, Graham, if you have anything you want to say there too.
I mean, I would say that talking in the case of Alkermes and also talking in previous organizations I've worked within, it's always been our goal to try and have one instance, because you want to minimize your technical debt. You want to minimize the impact of quarterly releases or regular releases. You want to minimize the cost of ongoing support and ongoing management of your system. And also, most organizations are pushing more for standardized processes that can be easily managed globally. So I would say, generally speaking, most of my experience is focused more around moving towards having one instance as much as possible. If you're in a situation where you have lots of different business units that are all doing different things and you require multiple instances, well, that's a whole piece of work you need to do as part of the value case in understanding that and understanding the cost of managing that post go live.
Wonderful. Okay. I wasn't sure if I was on mute or not, so that's good. I was not on mute. Let me see. Got quite a few, so it's always tricky to kind of work through them all. So bear with me just a second. Here we go. Let's see. What is a realistic blueprint and a fit gap or fit to standard time frame to ensure proper design is established before entering realization?
So that would depend on the approach that a client chooses, whether Greenfield, Brownfield. Again, I hate to use the "it depends" answer, but it kind of is an it depends answer. Well, for the fit gap, it depends if a client is looking to understand what S/4HANA functionality they would include in scope, and if they're doing a brownfield versus starting from scratch on a greenfield. A greenfield is like a net new project. A brownfield, again, it depends on the amount of scope that's chosen to be part of the project. Again, Graham, I don't know if you want to add any comments there.
For as much as this may help, I can say that in the case of Alkermes, which you've heard a little bit about the organization, it's a large organization, but not the biggest organization in the world. 3 global sites. So when we looked end to end at the plan to get us to full S/4HANA, including an integrated business planning implementation and things like sales analytics cloud and stuff like that. So that's primarily across all of our financials plus our manufacturing and supply chain and things. We were looking at somewhere in the 2 to 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 year time frame for an end-to-end implementation. Now, that's probably slow. I would say most implementation partners in the SAP world would say that's quite a significant amount of time. But we as an organization sat down and truly mapped that out to understand how we would manage the change and the best way for us to do it. You can kind of reverse back from there to look at the blueprint timeline. You could push a blueprint through in 3 months. You could take more time depending on the amount of stakeholders and the amount of business people you need involved in that process, to something more like 6 months maybe. So you're probably, depending on the size of your organization, depending on the scope of your implementation, you could be looking at anything like 3 to 6-ish months, give or take 50% in that process.
Awesome. All righty. Next question we have here. How long did this evaluation process take? And how much time did it take from Alkermes' team?
Yeah, so typically it takes about, it depends on the client's complexity. So how many instances, how many locations worldwide, how many modules they have implemented. But on average, it takes between 2 to 3 months. In the case of Alkermes, it took about 3.5 months, but that was more due to us having to stop for resource availability reasons. But on average, I think 3 months is a good number.
Yeah, and as far as resources and resource availability from the Alkermes team, the answer is get as many people into it as you can from a stakeholder perspective, because you want as many people as possible to truly understand the value of the potential move to S/4HANA that you're going to make. So we definitely pulled in a good amount of people. Probably 20, 30 people across our business regularly attended sessions. We managed the sessions in a way that it was not overly impactful to their time. So, 2 hours to maybe 4 hours a week, something like that.
Wonderful. All right. We have a question for Graham. Other than not having to manage a data center, have you found any other benefits of running SAP in the cloud?
Well, yes, the not having to have a data center is a big one. Of course, putting it in the cloud and sticking to the standard as much as possible is a big benefit for us. So reducing the amount of customization, finding a way to have standard updates and standard enhancement packs and support packs on a regular released basis significantly reduces the overall cost of ownership. So yes, there's a ton of benefits there in putting your SAP system in the cloud and keeping it as standard as possible, and just working with your partner on regular updates that become repeatable. I think gone are the days of taking weeks and months to do enhancement packs and support packs. So we saw a lot of benefit in getting to the point where we could have a repeatable enhancement pack, support pack strategy that would take a day, 2 days, a quarter.
Awesome. All right, next question we have here. Were they on Oracle exclusively, or did they have different ERPs before this project?
So yeah, you maybe missed the opening slides. We had 2 ERPs One is SAP ECC, the other is Oracle EBS. That happened as a result of the way the company grew, primarily through acquisitions. The strategy now, based on us going through this exercise and making the decision to move to S4HANA in the future and invest currently in ECC, the strategy is to move away from Oracle EBS and globalize on one instance of SAP ECC to enable a brownfield project moving to S4HANA some years in the future.
Awesome. All right, another one we have here. Won't Alkermes chip away at their overall benefits by going to ECC with global processes and standardizing to one ERP system? Are you confident that you'll be able to justify S4 later with these benefits already achieved?
Well, that's a really, really good question, because that goes back to the how much value can you drive out of an ECC system versus an S4HANA system. I think you can get value out of ECC by sticking to standard processes within ECC as much as possible, by having a global strategy, certainly in our case. There are, however, significant benefits that will come with an S4HANA system in the future that are not available right now through ECC. Things like IBP, Integrated Business Planning, things like the Sales Analytics Cloud, things like I was just talking about there, when you're fully in the cloud and your technical cost of ownership and your enhancement pack and support pack strategies are actively managed by your partner. There's tons and tons of additional benefit that will come in going from ECC to S4HANA. Granted, there is more short-term benefit in globalizing in ECC at this point in time.
Awesome. All right, we have another one here. Why did you pick Illumiti as a partner?
Why did we pick Illumiti? We picked Illumiti primarily because we obviously spoke to a number of organizations, but Illumiti was the organization that really asked the why question of us the most. Some companies we spoke to said, oh, you're thinking about going to S4HANA, sure, we'll put you on S4HANA. What Illumiti did for us was they helped us, they immediately spoke to us about getting stakeholders aligned, ensuring that the business is on board with a move to S4HANA, and then trying to understand what the business drivers were and what we as an organization were trying to achieve. And very quickly the conversation turned into, we as an organization need to get aligned on our strategy. And I mean, that really is why we engaged in Illumiti, because they challenged us. They really wanted to talk about the value of doing what we were doing, rather than just saying, yeah, we'll give you S4HANA.
All right, another one we have here. Given you have deferred your S4 migration, does that mean you'll have to go through this entire process again?
No, it shouldn't. I mean, there might be a delta. The technology may change in the coming years, and there could be a delta that we may need to assess. But no, we've done the business case. We've done the value case. We understand the benefits. We understand the roadmap. We've put the strategy in place. So, you know, most other things remaining equal, we should not need to go back through this process.
Wonderful. All righty. I feel like we're getting close to the end of the questions. I don't know if either of you can see the Q&A. Are there any particular questions you'd like to highlight before we close out today?
Sorry, I'm looking.
No worries.
I think there's a question there, number 25. What are the pros and cons and drivers to choose from keeping your SAP systems on-prem or moving to the cloud? I mean, I can answer that from my own personal point of view. There will be lots of people with lots of different points of view, I think, on that. I have spoken to kind of peers at other organizations who, for security reasons, want to remain on-prem. I think that the security value offerings now in going to the cloud are as strong, if not stronger, in going to the cloud. In my mind, it all comes back to how much do you want to manage your own data center and manage your own system and manage your own management of that system versus rely upon a centralized process and centralized management of your system. And it comes down to dollars and cents. And most times in my experience, it's more secure, cheaper, better, easier to move it to the cloud. So I think that's the best I can give on that one.
Do you want to look at number 32?
Number 32.
Have you discussed with SAP or anyone about RISE?
We have. We've discussed with SAP, and SAP also has a number of RISE partners that they're working with. I would say we've not got into the details of the RISE conversation with them yet, primarily because of the strategy that we've decided upon now. But we are familiar with RISE, we know what it's about, and I expect it will be an ongoing conversation over the coming months and years as we move on throughout this journey.
Awesome. All right, we have another one for you, Graham. You're on a roll. You mentioned that going to S4 would mean you would be completely in SaaS. Can you explain more?
Our goal would be to essentially eventually get to the point where S4 HANA, basically public cloud, we want to get to the point where it's a fully SaaS system that we that we're obviously not hosting it on-prem, that we're using standardized processes from SAP for the ongoing maintenance of our system. Whether that be quarterly releases or something different that we do. Right now we have, we have a situation where if we want to do enhancement packs or support packs or anything like that, it's a long piece of work with huge amounts of regression testing and pulling in business users to test and things like that. If we get to a fully SaaS model, the system would be fully managed in a SaaS way, and the overall cost, therefore, of the ongoing management of the system, the technical cost of supporting the system would significantly decrease. If that answers that question.
I think it does. All righty. Well, I think that's all we got for questions today. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much to our presenters. Please make sure to keep an eye out for an email, which will include a link to review this content, as well as make sure to fill out our survey so that you can let our speakers know what you thought. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.